All right, guys, how are you? Welcome to Friday Live. We've got lots and lots to get through this week. We'll start by introducing ourselves as we always do. My name is Ciaran Fox. I'm the manager of Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan.
My name is Melissa. I work on the Youth Information Project with Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan.
Hi, I'm Cassandra and I am a detached youth worker with Youth Work Ireland, Cavan Monaghan.
I'm Barry. I'm the LGBT youth worker for Cavan and Monaghan.
How are you guys? So, right, Barry, we obviously would like to have you because our first thing that we want to talk about is something that we became aware of towards the end of last week, which was an online sort of campaign orchestrated against the LGBT community called Pridefall. Do you want to give us a bit of background on what that actually was?
Yeah, well, Pridefall, it's essentially a group of alt-right. I need to be PC because these people are human as well, apparently. A group of alt-right people who are sort of starting a campaign against LGBT, trying to take back the month of June. Because June is Pride Month, and it sort of is Pride Month because it's sort of the anniversary of the riots, the, what do you call them? Stonewall
riots, yeah.
Thank you, very happy. It's the anniversary of that there back in 1969. That's how June actually became Pride Month, and it's sort of happened globally that June is, and it's sort of against homophobia. It's against people being excluded. I also have a screen of Jerry Girls in front of me. I can't see you people. Sorry. So, don't share that screen. Yeah, so that's why June has become Pride Month. But now there's people in the alt-right who sort of want to pull June back, take it away from the LGBT community, and are sort of questioning why LGBT people need to have pride and things like that. This Pridefall, which has come about last week that we heard about, and I know Melissa contacted me and I'd heard from a couple of young people as well this week that were worried about it, is essentially an online campaign where they're going to start spilling hate onto people's pages if they identify as being LGBT or as being an LGBT supporter. But what I have seen is that they've tried this campaign a couple of years and it hasn't really taken off the ground. And what it is saying is it's focusing mainly on big industry, such as corporations like MSNBC that has the rainbow in its logo, things like that there. But again, it hasn't really taken off. It hasn't. I know a lot of young people are removing their LGBT identity from the social media. And I suppose, like we talked about this here before, I think one of the most important things is that young people are responsible with the social media, with what they share about themselves and what they want other people to know. But also, it sort of goes back to the digital health campaign that you guys rolled out back in February. It is about being responsible online and knowing what you can do if people start targeting you for whatever reason. So that's essentially where I am, where I think we are with Pridefall. It's not necessarily something to be afraid of as an individual. Now that doesn't mean that people aren't going to use this as an opportunity to be hateful, because unfortunately that's part of human nature. It shouldn't be, but it is. But again, just be responsible online. Look after your digital health.
Mm-hmm. And obviously it didn't gain any traction this year. No. It came and it went, and
well, it hasn't, you see, because they are talking about the whole month of June is to be an anti-LGBT campaign. But I haven't heard of anything starting. Like June 1st was supposed to be the kickoff of it, but I've heard of nothing, even globally, of any large companies receiving much. So hopefully it won't take any traction.
I suppose the problem is that even when the young person contacted us to kind of highlight it, it's scary for young people to think there's that much hate around, and that's what that young person couldn't believe, that there was that much hate, or that somebody would have, even bother giving that much intention of hate online to other people. And it was a bit scary for them. So it's the bit of the young people kind of feeling unsettled about it, even though nothing may come of it. It's just even that it had that effect on them of feeling kind of fearful or kind of spooked by it.
Yeah. And I think in a time that we are so dependent on social media to stay connected with people, that's what makes it even harder for young people, that they don't, that the one safe space, or the one space that they have to connect at the moment, is endangered. But like when you talk about hate, listen, it's going to go on forever. Hate will exist. You see what's going on in America over the last week. Like Black people's lives do matter, and we're still seeing people get targeted because of their color. So unfortunately, once somebody's different, there's always going to be somebody that would find reason to hate that person without any substance. There's no substance behind a lot of the stuff that goes on. So yeah, how do we deal with hate? I personally, like, I'm advising young people, if they feel uncomfortable, walk away from social media for a while as well, because it can be too much. Social media can actually have a bad effect on your mental health.
Yeah,
you raise a good point there too, in terms of for a lot of people who've never been as dependent on social media because we are so isolated. And it sort of brings me on to our next point. I want to close up on this Pridefall issue first, because obviously it did scare a lot of young people. And it is concerning to think that there's that much intolerance out there in a time when we like to think that we're moving past that. You mentioned about, some young people removing their LGBT sort of anything that would identify them as part of that community from their social media page. And I just wanted to hear, like, it's important to be safe, but surely we shouldn't have to do something like that.
Shouldn't have to, but if that's what a young person needs to do for now to make themselves feel safe, then I would encourage it. I would and I wouldn't. Like, it's a difficult one. It's hard to say to encourage somebody not to do it, but if that's what the young person needs to stay safe, then that is your choice. Do whatever you feel you need to do to stay safe and to stay comfortable. But also, there's a really important option that you always have. Anybody that gives you any grief online, just report them. Report them. If there's somebody that you know of that's toxic and that's always spilling toxic stuff on social media, unfriend them, unfollow them, do whatever you need to do. But you don't need to see these things. And the more you report, then the less likely you are to see this stuff come up on your feeds. It's great to have 1,000 friends on Facebook, but realistically, how many of them people do you actually know? And how many of them people care about your identity when they're posting what they're posting on social media? And that's the important thing. You need to be social media responsible.
No, absolutely.
Sorry.
All we can do is hope that we don't see any traction gained by this campaign, and young people are allowed to be themselves, and everyone's allowed to be themselves. Okay, I want to sort of segue into, and I know you can't actually say I want to segue, but I just did. I want to segue into the announcement just in the last hour around COVID restrictions, and obviously the fact that Ireland seems to be fast tracking or at least accelerating the anticipated roadmap back to reopening the country. Melissa, what are the key points in the release around these restrictions?
Yeah, well, they were just announced, but there seems to be a massive acceleration of everything. Shops reopening, they're talking about that up to 6 people can come and visit a person's home once they keep 2 meters apart. And they're talking about that even the over 70s that are cocooning, they can welcome a certain amount of people back into their homes if they wear face coverings, if everybody wears face coverings while they're in the home for a short amount of time. And they are talking about maybe the possibility of summer camps, if it's kept within 15 people working together and not mixing then with other groups. And they're talking about some sort of sports activities as well happening outside. So it does seem like there is hope and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And there's a lot of information. If you go to rte.ie, there's a lot of, if you go to live updates, there's a lot of information coming through. But it does seem like even in terms of loneliness or in terms of not being able to see friends or maybe having no plans for the summer, it seems now we can probably start to make plans for the summer. And there seem to be you can stay within your own county. So it's not 5 kilometers or anything like that anymore. You can stay within your own county. And if you live within 20 kilometers of another county, a neighboring county, you know, if you want to travel 20 kilometers and it's into a different county, you can do that as well. And then further on in the summer, they're kind of encouraging, there's going to be like that you can travel around your own country kind of thing.
So it looks like things are starting to ease.
Yeah.
Cassandra, what are your thoughts in terms of how do you feel about all of that easing off?
Well, I think for all of us, it's a relief because we were not sure when, like, things were going to start, like, going back to normal, and even though it won't be normal again, but, you know, starting to get a bit of normality back to our lives. So I think it's a huge relief for anybody, to be honest, especially young people now at the minute, can start making some plans for their summer and maybe start enjoying it a little bit, give them a little bit of an ease. Especially young people now.
Okay, and Barry, do you see this impacting on young people particularly, or any more so than, I suppose, the wider thing? They've talked quite a lot about summer camps, and over the last few weeks, even before this announcement, there was a lot of recognition about the impact that that the lockdown is having on young people. So young people, I mean, all young people, is this lockdown going to be required or going to be keenly felt by young people? I suppose what I'm asking. You're still muted. Once in every stream, Barry likes to talk while he's muted. So yeah, stop hitting yourself now.
I'm back. Yeah. Sorry. No, I think for us, particularly, like the four of us, we all work with young people. So I think the fact that it's actually going to open us up, that we have a possibility of engaging with the young people who are in our services, is fantastic. You have the sporting organisations as well. They're going to be allowed to start going back to team sports. It's no contact, but at least young people are going to be able to engage in that way as well. Getting out to see family and friends, being able to travel, go into town, see your mates. Now, yes, the lifting of these restrictions is fantastic, but again, we still need to be socially responsible. Like, they're moving from the stay home message to the stay local message, but we still need to be responsible. Like, if you're not feeling well, you shouldn't go out. You shouldn't engage, because again, a lot of people are getting COVID-19 and thankfully aren't actually feeling the ill effects of it, but that doesn't mean that they'll not be able to transmit it. So we still need to continue to be socially responsible when we are out and about. But I think it's fantastic, the fact that we might possibly be able to have summer camps, that young people, up to groups of 15 people, might be able to actually meet and engage and just socialize outside the family home, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. The one downside is I'm going to have to go to work more often, and I'm not happy about that. Now I'm getting really comfortable just going to the office a couple of days a week and working remotely like this. This is fantastic. So I was saying at work, I'm going to have to get children, so hopefully childcare will then become an issue and I'll be allowed to work at home.
It's good to say any of that in the public sphere as well. That's excellent. And Melissa, I suppose that sort of leads us into a question we've been having quite regularly from the young people that we're working with, which is around young people actually socialising, and I suppose even relationships at the moment, and how difficult that is. So where are we at with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the discussion we were having around, you know, can young people, they're meeting outside, they're mixing with their friends, and in the normal space of time, you might be hooking up with different people, kissing, all that kind of stuff. So I suppose to say at the moment, it's still supposed to be that you're 2 meters apart from everybody. So that's one thing. But it is very difficult that if you are young and single, you know, how are you supposed to meet people? Are you supposed to get into romantic relationships and stuff? And just wanted to highlight that the guidance at the moment is that, you know, if you're in a relationship and you're living with that person, you're allowed to have sexual intercourse. But apart from that, it's to avoid having sexual intercourse with people that you don't know. And it's not that COVID-19 can be transmitted through sexual intercourse. It's not the act of sexual intercourse. It's the kissing. So it's the exchange of saliva that's the problem, because if you have the virus, the droplets are in the saliva, and that's where the issue is. So it's supposed to be at the moment that the advice is, you know, not to be hooking up with people that you're not in a relationship with, that you live with. So that's very difficult for young people, or for anybody that, you know, is not living with their romantic partner. But it is supposed to be that's the rule. And then even if you are in a relationship and you're having sex, that if you're not feeling well, then you shouldn't be having sex either, you know. And of course, in any normal circumstances, you know, people should be using protection. So they should be using condoms, and they should have access to their contraceptives, like the pill or whatever they're taking as well, that make sure that they have them kind of topped up as well.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned there about the kissing, and I suppose it's all of that close contact. It's very hard to socially distance, you know, while you're involved in a sexual relationship. Cassandra, I wanted to ask you, just in terms of young people having those sexual relationships, like Melissa's absolutely right, that is the guidance. But I think it'd be a little bit naive to think that no young people are out there and having sexual relationships. So I think one of the things we need to address is what services are there for them if young people are having sex outside relationships, and if they are having those contacts, what services are there? Because I know until very recently the message was not to be going to your doctor. So where are we at with that?
Well, I suppose if you just have like general questions about having sex or kissing or anything like that during COVID-19, like we're online, you can ask us. There's plenty of people to ask. There are some sexual health clinics still open, but they have some restrictions. So you would like have to ring ahead maybe. You can still ring your doctor and make an appointment if you need to. So it's not as if there's no services. There are some there. It's just about maybe ringing ahead instead of just rocking up and being there, because there are some restrictions, but there are absolutely services there. And like if you need any information on them, there's people out there that will help with that as well. Like we're online from 10 till 10 every day, and we could give you some information if you need it.
And Barry, there was something came up during a recent LGBT live where we talked about young people who are trans and all kinds of things, being uncomfortable often going to their doctor. And I suppose it's no different to young people who are, you know, known to a family doctor, and they have to go to them around being involved in a sexual relationship, be that homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, it doesn't matter. Some people, and quite often young people, find that quite difficult to talk about and quite embarrassing. But one of the things we talked about is the fact that actually, at the moment, doctors are quite often doing things by video call or by phone call, and young people may be finding that a little bit easier. So is that still the case? Are doctors still doing that? And are young people potentially going to find that a little bit easier?
Yeah, well, as far as I'm aware, they are still doing that. There may be some easing of restrictions. Excuse me. Excuse me. There may be a bit of an easing of restrictions, but again, it depends on your GP. So just contact your GP. Again, you don't rock up to your doctor anyway at the moment, so you do have to call in advance. Some doctors may have limited amount of patients allowed to visit, so just continue to do that. But I would say for the majority of it, if a phone consultation was possible, then that's possibly the best way to go for a lot of young people. Especially, I do find whenever you're talking about sexual health as well, a lot of the times, young people just don't have the information and they're afraid to have that conversation. And it's not, the information is out there, but it's knowing where to go. And again, as Cassandra was saying there, the likes of your service is there from 10 to 10 and 7 days a week. So not to be afraid to contact if there's anything that's of concern. You don't have to go into too much information, but we can point you in the right direction to get the right help that you need. And the same with myself, if any young trans LGBT people at all, not just trans, have any concerns, they can contact me and I can point them in the right direction. My office is like a library when it comes to sexual health. So there's plenty of information, and we can work together to send information to people if they need it as well.
Yeah.
But the important thing is, and especially with sexual health as well, if you have a concern, do get it checked, because a lot of the times with especially STIs, you could have an STI and you may not be aware of it for months. Some STIs you never get symptoms, and some of them can lead to serious complications in future life. I know for men and women, infertility can be a problem with some of them. So you just need to, if you have a concern, if you have had unprotected sex, do reach out and get the information that you need.
And Melissa, Cassandra mentioned STI clinics are still available, and she mentioned that there are some restrictions around that. Yeah. Now, STI clinics are something we probably have very set in our mind as something you can just rock up to, but I presume that's not the case at the moment. What are the restrictions around STI clinics specifically?
Yeah. Just what I'm going to do after this live stream, I'm going to put in the comment section. There's a page on Spun Out that is actually going through each county of what STI clinics are open and what are not. So basically, yeah, usually there would be a certain day of the week that you could go to an STI clinic in your hospital, but at the moment you have to ring ahead and make an appointment. So that's the way they're just working it at the moment. Like, it is restricted, but if you need treatment, you need treatment, and that's it. So it's best with everything at the moment, not just STIs. If you are not feeling well in some way, people are avoiding going to the doctor because they think, oh, the doctors are dealing with COVID-19 and what I have doesn't really matter, or it can wait. At this stage, doctor, it has eased. You can see in the numbers that it's eased. And, even the hospitals have ways of working that, there's a certain door you go through for if you're suspected COVID-19, and a different door for everybody else. So there is enough room and there is enough capacity to help anybody who needs any medical attention. And even if it's mental health issues, the doctor wants to see you coming in. The doctor wants to see you. And just like Barry was saying there, what I wanted to say, but he took it out of my mouth, was that not all STIs have symptoms. So if you're having unprotected sex, you need to go and get tested at some stage. And what else was I going to say? I can't remember. Oh yeah, protection is, if you're having sex, protection is needed all the time. So if you use a condom, it's 99% effective if you use it right. So if you use it right, it's 99% effective. So if you don't use it right, if you put it inside out, or it splits, or you just put it on wrong, or you don't put it on far enough, it's not as effective. So it's very important. And if you use the pill or something like that, that does not protect you against STIs. So you need to be either using both, or if you use a condom correctly, you're getting 99% effectiveness.
I was just looking there. There is a local service normally runs in Monaghan, but it is actually closed at the moment. And the majority of local STI clinics, you can't just rock up. You do need to phone in advance anyway. So I have the number of the service that covers Monaghan, Dundalk, Drogheda. We can maybe post it afterwards as well. But again, it's not, unfortunately, it's not something. If you have a concern around your sexual health, and it's an urgent concern, you can ring them to try and get an appointment, but you can also go to A&E if you have a serious concern around anything around your sexual health. If you feel you may have been exposed to something, then you can go to your A&E or your GP as well. So them's your option.
Most STIs are treatable. Like, most of them are treatable with antibiotics, and it's fine. But it's when you leave it and you don't do something about it, it can have more damaging effects. And one of which is infertility. So it's very important to address it and get it over and done with. Take your antibiotics and then it's over.
Absolutely. There's one other piece I want to touch on with all of this, and all of this talk about sex during lockdown and what that's like for young people, and that's around consent. So consent hasn't changed, has it?
No.
No. I think everyone's thinking the same thing, but let's hear from Cassandra. What way has consent changed in people's minds? What way has the perception of it changed, or has it changed at all?
Well, I think a little bit maybe, you know, things are starting to be like it's being talked about a little bit more, I think, thank God. But you know, it's been discussed between young people, and it's on television programs and it's on different things like that. So that's good. It's being spoke about. But look, consent is and will always be like the most important thing, the most important part about having sex with anybody or any sexual encounter at all. You have to make sure you have your partner's consent and that they're comfortable with the situation regardless, you know. That's the most important thing to remember.
It's a good foundation for any relationship, to be honest, consent, because it is about respecting the other person and respecting. And I think when we're in lockdown as well, it may be an issue, especially if there's a young couple that are actually living together. Like, just because you agree to have sexual relations tonight doesn't mean that you're also giving the person permission to have it tomorrow night and the night after and the night after. It needs to be taken on a day-by-day basis. And sometimes when you're in a relationship, it can be easy to actually to almost take advantage, not intentionally, but you do need to be respectful, and you need to make sure that consent, you need to ask for consent every time. It's not just, and I'm not saying you have to go, do I have consent to touch you? But there is, you know, in a relationship when somebody is definitely, but there's nothing wrong with saying, do I have consent? Do you want to? And if the person says no, then no is no. And if they say no halfway through, no is no. You know, and that's the other important thing. Once somebody says no, you have to respect that.
You're right, Barry. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. You know, and having consent is critical. It is the fundamental baseline. And just when you're talking there, it made me think of I was on the radio last week talking about normal people and how young people are perceiving it. And as a result, I had to actually watch some of Normal People. And I know in the very first episode, or in the very first sort of sex scene that they have, the male character does say, is this what you want? He does ask for consent. And I think it's really important to understand that asking for consent does not kill the mood. It does not take sex off the table. It does not do any of these things. It actually is a huge mark of respect, and it needs to happen. Sorry, Melissa, you were going to come in there.
Oh, I don't know what I was going to say, but even like, you know, that's why it's so good that if you know the person and you're both responsive, so that when you're both in the moment, that the other person understands, you know, what you're saying to them or what noises you're doing or whatever it is, that you're being responsive and saying, yes, I agree with what's going on and I'm happy with what's happening, so that there's equal response from both people in the relationship to kind of communicate, because that's what I'm trying to say, communication. We have to be able to communicate with each other and say, we're enjoying this and we want this to happen. So there has to be equal communication between the two people for consent to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Because silence is not consent.
Yeah. The absence of the withdrawal of consent is not in itself consent. Absolutely right. Look, we could probably sit here for a month talking about what does and does not constitute consent and what it means, but I think Cassandra probably summed it up right at the start when she said, like, consent is the baseline. Consent is, without consent, there really can be no relationship, and there definitely can be no physical intimacy. So yeah, absolutely right. Guys,
Can I ask a question before we move on? Cassandra, do you live in a house full of giants? I mean, that door handle is extremely high.
I'm actually
That's been
sitting on the
bugging me
ground.
since the start. No, I gathered that.
I'm sitting on the ground. But I am quite short, so the door, you know.
There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, sorry, now you can move on with the sensible stuff.
Thank you, Barry. No, I wanted really quickly to cover something, which is a question we got in. There's lots of stuff coming in around leaving cert grading and all this kind of stuff. I think we're probably going to have to leave it and address it next week. But there's one piece I want to address, which is a young person who's contacted us saying they were expecting to have a summer job, but because of the way things are, they won't have that. And the summer job was in a hotel. But they're saying now, I won't have that, so I won't be able to save money for college. So can I apply for job seekers benefit? Melissa has youth information.
unfortunately, the answer is no. So when you finish your Leaving Cert, you can't apply for job seekers for 3 months. Okay, so from when you leave school, you have to wait a certain amount of weeks. It's 3 months you have to wait to apply for it. So they're presuming, I suppose, that in the period that you're off, that then you're going to be going to college. So it's kind of, it takes it out. Every Leaving Cert student, they can't get anything, unfortunately, until the 3 months have passed. So even though they probably had a promise of a job or something like that, they can't. But if they get past that stage, if somebody's not going to college, they can apply for it then after the 3 months have passed. And like, even if you want to take it in terms of weeks, you can do that. But you do, even when you're that kind of age, you get a lower rate as well. So they are going to take into account that you're probably living with your parents. So you're going to be on a lower rate. I think it's €112 a week. So you won't get the full job seekers like somebody that's over 25. You're going to get a lower rate.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be means tested as well. So if your parents are above a certain threshold, you won't get anything.
Yeah.
No, look, I think it was important to address it because a lot of young people are in that position today, sort of thinking about summer employment and having a few euro for going to college in September or whenever that is for them.
It is very scary, but the one thing, hopefully there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, because there is talk that hotels will be starting to open up at the end of June. So some hotels, now they're not going to be full services, the bars aren't going to be open, but some hotels may have bits of part-time work out there. So just keep your ear to the ground, and hopefully something will fall.
Yeah, and you know, it's a good time, just to get your CV done, get a cover letter ready, kind of do things like that. And I've been amazed at the amount of free webinars, online training, you know, information, stuff like that. So have a look at whatever your interest is, having a look around for kind of free courses that are available online at the moment. And maybe it's just, if work is not a possibility, kind of doing things like that to build up your CV and to build up your information. So having a wee look around online to see what webinars or courses are available online that you can do over the summer.
No, absolutely. Look, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. We're back on Monday with LGBT Live, and on Wednesday, Con's back with the parents' questions and answers, and we're back with Friday Live next Friday at 3:30. So we will see you next week. Thank you, Bob.